As we have discussed in the data protection intro, with SVMDR we have the possibility to SnapMirror at the storage virtual machine level. This means that you can replicate the volumes from one storage virtual machine to another storage virtual machine without having to specify the relationships individually. So you simply specify one relationship from SVM1 to SVM2 in a different cluster, and that will automatically replicate all the volumes that you create in the source SVM. By default, all the volumes will be replicated, but if you want, you can unprotect a volume that contains non-critical data, or that you simply don't want to replicate for any other reason. Something to take a note of is that you cannot replicate from a higher release like 9.4 to a lower release like 9.3. But you can replicate the other way around. Of course, ideally, you will have all of your clusters at the same release level, the same ONTAP version. So also, I hope it's clear that you cannot replicate your storage virtual machines within the same cluster. You have to connect to a different SVM in a different cluster, and the SVMs as well as the clusters will have to be peered. Interesting to know is that next to replicating the volumes, you can also replicate the configuration of a storage virtual machine, that is, the identity. So when identity preserve is set to true, the SnapMirror relation will also replicate the configuration of the storage virtual machine, including the IP information. If for whatever reason you do not want to replicate the libs, because maybe the network situation at the other site is different, you can discard the network configurations via the SnapMirror policy, using the discard configs network parameter. What is replicated when identity preserve is set to true is everything in green. As you can see, the SAN information cannot be replicated, but policies, role-based access control, volume information, and so on is replicated if wanted. Setting identity preserve to false will still replicate some information, but not as much, obviously, as when it is set to true. Now let's have a look at an example. First, we create two storage virtual machines. Let's start with that. And one of them is going to be the destination. The first one on cluster 2 is the source SVM. I'm using cluster 2 because that's running 9.3 and cluster 1 is running 9.4. So I can't go from cluster 1 to cluster 2, so I go from cluster 2 to cluster 1. Then I create the second SVM, which is of the subtype DP destination. That means that I don't have to specify a root volume and the other stuff, because it will be the destination of a relationship. Then let's just set up the source SVM by creating a single volume in there and mount the volume. So we make sure we have a volume that is running inside the source storage virtual machine. Obviously, we want it to be accessible by a client, so as always I use NFS, but I could just as well use CIFS. But I'm using NFS, so what we do is we create an export policy, open up full control for all machines, then we will connect the policy to the volumes, to the source to the root volume, as well as to the data volume. This is for ease of demonstration. Of course, I should have a different policy connected, or I could have a different policy connected to the root volume. So both volumes have the proper export policy. Then I can create a LIF, and I'm going to use IP address 192.168.4228, and obviously to access that I have to enable NFS. Then I can go to the client, create a mount point, let's call it 228, and we mount the volume. We create some files just to prove that we can write to the volume. Okay, now let's continue. So we go back to our clusters and we're going to set up the SnapMirror relationship. So first we pair the SVM with the other one and we accept on the destination cluster. So the pairing is correct. Then from the destination cluster we will create a SnapMirror policy, call it drpol, and the type is going to be asynchronous mirror, which is the DP version. I create the relationship. The schedule is 8 hours. Type is DP, policy is drpol, and identity preserve is set to true. So I also want to have all the configuration replicated from one SVM to the other SVM, including the networking. Then we initialize the relationship, and now that particular volume will have to be replicated to the destination SVM. So we can simply check the transfer of the relationship, and you see it's uninitialized, still transferring, and it's healthy. And after some time we check again and we see that the SnapMirror relationship is idle. As you see, I create file D as well. That file will not be on the destination volume until there is a next update, but that will only be in 8 hours and we're not going to wait for that long. I stop the source SVM and try to write another file, and you see that when the SVM is stopped, the volume is no longer accessible from the client. Then we break the relationship. That should make the destination available, but only after we start the SVM. So let's first check and see whether the relationship is broken off, which is correct. Then we run vserver start and we start the destination storage virtual machine. Now I should be able to write again, because that volume, we use the same IP address. That volume is accessible via the client. We replicated all of the configuration, so the situation is more or less identical at the destination site. And as you can see, file D is not there.